Good evening, welcome to the newsroom. This is the full briefing and my name is Samson Kasumba Mulunda. Let's have a show. Well, everybody has opinions. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, everyone has an opinion. The good thing about that is everyone has a copy. Now, you either suck in these opinions and the conclusions thereof like a sponge, or you choose to do what we're going to do on this show. Critically analyze, critically question the processes leading up to the conclusions that those that bear those opinions have gone through, or you choose to do the alternative, just suck in everything and anything. We're not going to do that. We will critically examine the conclusions that everybody in our public space wants us to swallow. When we do that, then we can tell who is like no, who is being conservative with the truth. Let's get to the issue for the night. But even before we do, your role here is to get onto Twitter and Facebook. Get onto Urban TV Uganda on our Facebook page, Urban Television, and on Twitter, Urban TV Uganda, #TNR, and keep tabs with us. Tweet anything about what we're discussing today. The question for tonight is, should Amama Mbabazi, the former Prime Minister, leave the NRM? Should he go back and reconcile with them? Or should he just find something else to do like law and get on to that? The question again for tonight that I want you to contribute on is, should Amama Mbabazi, former Prime Minister, go back to the NRM and reconcile with his former bosses? Or should he stay and fight on to the logical conclusion of this? Or should he find something else to do? Let me lay my case for tonight. But before I do that, that's coming up later. By the way, later on in the show we have Angelo. Ladies and gentlemen, politics is just like chess. You've got to know what to play and when to play it. And two, you also have to know that before you win, it depends on the erratic moves of your opponent as well as your good play. Now, on February 10th, an eventful day started with interdenominational prayer somewhere in Chankwanzi. President Yoweri Museveni has a health walk. Now, the question, the critical one is, was that health walk really a health walk, or was it more than a health walk? Because we know now that within that health walk, members of the caucus made a proposal for the president of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, to be the unopposed flag bearer of the NRM. The critical question is whether that was legal within the structures of the NRM or not. That's for later. February 17th, President Yoweri Museveni says that the NRM had tamed intrigue that was fomenting division within the ruling party's rank and file during the closure of a 10-day retreat in Chankwanzi. March 3rd, police probed bribery inside the NRM. March 6th, National Resistance Movement leaders disagree on how to carry out the exercise of moving around the country to brief the party members on the Chankwanzi resolution. Government Chief Whip Justice Kasule Lumumba on the Chankwanzi resolution had this to say: "We did not make any resolutions because we disagreed on how to conduct the sub-county conferences. Others wanted us to first conduct district conferences before going to the sub-county." March 12th, General Kaihura Kale writes a letter denying the harassment of supporters of Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi. By that time, he was still Right Honorable Prime Minister Amama Mbabazi. March 16th, MPs get cash to diffuse NRM tension, or was it to popularize the Chankwanzi resolution? That's a critical question for now. We may never know. April 3rd, ladies and gentlemen, the Inspector General of Police, IGP General Kale Kaihura, tells legislators that issues between him and the NRM Women's League chairperson, Jacqueline Mbabazi, will be sorted out. Where they sorted out, we still have a question to ask. Sometime later in there, the president had this to say, and I quote. Can we have that quote running up over there? What the president said while this was going on. And while that quote comes, I want you to know that all that fast forward in the month of September, Amama Mbabazi is fired, his guards are removed, takes back bench. President Yoweri Museveni is welcomed back from the UN General Assembly. Was that being welcomed back, or was that more? Well, the president had this to say. Somewhere in there, we agreed on consolidating party cohesion by enhancing the party's ability to handle the party issues that were cropping up. Some issues are arising from some of the members starting campaigns early. That's said by the president. Somewhere in there, after the president is welcomed back, Mike Mukula asks Mbabazi to resign. Mbabazi, somewhere in there, happens to greet Rugunda. And as we have this, President Yoweri Museveni has recently said that no one can play with the NRM. Is the president referring or alluding to anyone? What I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, is that politics is a lot like chess. You've got to find a way to play. You've got to find it quickly and fast. But you also have to understand that there's always somebody on the other end of the board waiting to see how you play and pick up on your moves. In our studios, we have a political analyst and a consultant here, Angelo Izama. Angelo Izama, welcome to the show.
I'm very glad to be here on this is your first full briefing on the newsroom.
It definitely is.
Very excited for you.
We're going to get into that political chess, but for now, just before we get into there, I want you to catch up on this, that next year's NRM party primaries are coming up. One of the most significant events in this political chess on the calendar will be up in July. The build-up to the event has been heightened by the fallout between the president and chairman of the party, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and the ex-prime minister, Amama Mbabazi, who is also NRM Secretary General. Some want him to leave. Let's take a detail of this, and when we come back, the political chess and Angelo Izama. See you then.
By July next year, we should have completed the elections of internal processes, organs of NRM, from village, sub-parish, sub-county, constituency, districts, and regions, because those then will constitute the new delegates.
The build-up to the event has been heightened by the fallout between President Yoweri Museveni and ex-Prime Minister Amama Mbabazi, who is also the NRM Party Secretary General.
In this particular case, Honorable Mbabazi did not attend. To the best of my knowledge, he did not send an apology.
Mbabazi's chances of flourishing in his political career are being narrowed by the growing resistance among NRM legislators, which could be a political statement to the Rukunjiri District NRM leagues who have to support him if he is to take part in the July Delegates Conference and run for any political seat on an NRM ticket. Sources close to the president told the newsroom that Mbabazi's political lifestyle triggered his dismissal. Sources add that, among other things, Mbabazi neglected northern Uganda, abandoned the party secretariat, and spent much of his 3 years as Prime Minister concentrating on government's diplomatic deals as opposed to President Museveni's flair of socialization. Despite his repeated denial, Mbabazi is touted as President Museveni's potential opponent ahead of the general elections.
Angelo Izama, what is Amama Mbabazi's next move on the board?
I imagine the most likely outcome he's seeking is to knock down the king. Or checkmate, for that matter.
Okay. Some would argue that trying to knock down the king has been the genesis of his exodus.
Actually, not just him. I think it's an established truism now in the long history of the NRA, the NRM, that any attempt to go against the chairman of the party is also constituted to be going against the party itself. So we've seen many victims of this philosophy within the NRM. Of course, you remember the most famous one being Dr. Kizza Besigye. But then there was a huge exodus of cabinet members, including actually the president's personal friend, the late Eria Kategaya. So I think it's now, former Prime Minister Mbabazi is probably the last in this long line of luminaries who will fall to this logic within the NRM.
Okay. Who are the pawns in this game?
Well, first I think is the public. We have been almost running the Amama story for a whole year, and it hasn't been very clear what the outcome of this contest was, and what happened in the last 2 weeks, with the president basically, setting him aside and appointing his childhood friend, is to redraw the chessboard. Okay. But I think in between here you've got NRM MPs, foot soldiers. You've got certain family members, and everything will come to a head in the first half of next year when the primaries go. I think for people who support Amama Mbabazi or think he has a political future, they have to really choose between four things. One is that he should resign his post as Secretary General to make it easier. He can flee the country. I saw a headline saying he can't flee. But I would be very surprised if he arrived at the NRM Delegates Conference as a Secretary General. It looks very, very unlikely right now.
Okay.
That is a huge challenge for him.
The fight has moved from cabinet, where former Prime Minister Mama Mbabazi obviously isn't. How do you play the primaries, depending on if you are a Mama Mbabazi or the NRM? How do you play the primaries, and how does that end?
It's very important to have access to delegates. And if you look at the way the last primaries were organized, really they are called at the behest of the president. I have spoken to senior members of the NRM who don't even know where the money for the primaries comes from. I mean, the financing in NRM is very opaque. So I think the president has within his chessboard the most advantages, which is what we call the incumbency. He will call the primaries at the right time. He just has to make sure that he has no rivals when he gets there.
Okay. Some have argued that there is no chessboard at all, and what somebody has done is that. I don't know how true that is, but politics is just like that. And how this will end up waits to be seen. As ugly as that looked like, could be that that's how Uganda's politics might just end up. But somebody has already been out there on Twitter, and this is what we have. Njoroge Daniel from all the way from Kenya has said, not very long ago, our neighbors in Kenya, or our neighbors in Uganda, had Kenya, he's actually referring to Kenya, this English is difficult to come by, had one of the worst post-election violence in the country's history. This stemmed from the implosion of KANU party due to political power struggles between Arap Moi and VP Mwai Kibaki. Museveni and Amama should be aware that this is a very familiar story. Do you agree?
I don't know. We'll wait to see.
Well, keep tweeting. This continues, and keep tweeting. I will certainly respond to your tweets, and keep that moving. Get everybody on this. This has been the newsroom. Up next in the newsroom is BBC Focus on Africa. See you tomorrow. This has been the full briefing. Samson Kasumba is my name. See you then.
This is Urban TV.